Aria's heart pounded as she crouched in the shadows of the alien labor camp. The acrid stench of chemicals burned her nostrils, a constant reminder of the harsh reality that had become her life. For 3 years, she had toiled under the watchful eyes of the Zarkan, the insectoid race that had swept across Earth with terrifying efficiency. But tonight was different. Tonight, she would escape or die trying. The young woman's eyes darted nervously as she watched the hulking forms of her captors move about the compound. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed dully in the harsh artificial light, mandibles clicking as they communicated in their unintelligible language. Aria suppressed a shudder, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. With trembling fingers, she clutched the makeshift lockpick she'd painstakingly crafted from scrap metal. Months of careful observation and planning had led to this moment. She knew the guard rotations by heart, had memorized every blind spot in their surveillance. Now it was time to put that knowledge to use. As the nearest guard turned away, Aria darted from her hiding spot. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold metal floor as she sprinted towards the perimeter fence. Reaching the electrified barrier, she took a deep breath and began to work on the control panel. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she manipulated the alien circuitry. Every second felt like an eternity, each distant sound causing her heart to skip a beat. Just when she thought she couldn't take the tension any longer, there was a soft click. The fence powered down. Aria didn't hesitate. She squeezed through the narrow opening she had created and found herself outside the camp for the first time in years. The cool night air felt like freedom on her skin, but she knew she couldn't savor it. Not yet. In the distance, she could see the looming silhouettes of abandoned human structures. Among them was her true goal, the old military base. If the rumors among the prisoners were true, it still housed functional spacecraft. It was her only chance of truly escaping the Zarkan's reach. Aria ran as she had never run before. Her muscles screamed in protest, unused to such exertion after years of malnourishment and forced labor. But the fear of recapture drove her onward, each ragged breath carrying her further from captivity. As she neared the base, an alarm suddenly blared from the direction of the camp. Her absence had been discovered. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but Aria forced it down. She was too close to give up now. The young woman vaulted over a crumbling wall, landing in what had once been the base's vehicle depot. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight before her. Amidst the wreckage of human tanks and aircraft stood a lone spaceship, its sleek lines a stark contrast to the destruction around it. It was clearly of human design, likely a prototype that had been left behind during the invasion. Aria approached it cautiously, hardly daring to hope. As she drew closer, she could see that the ship bore scorch marks and battle damage, but it appeared largely intact. The sound of approaching Zarkan vehicles spurred her into action. Aria scrambled up the ship's boarding ramp, praying that the internal systems were still functional. As she entered the cockpit, lights flickered to life, responding to her presence. "Please work," she whispered, sliding into the pilot's seat. Her hands flew over the controls, muscle memory from countless hours spent in flight simulators as a child guiding her actions. To her amazement, the ship's engines began to hum. Outside, she could hear the angry chittering of Zarkan soldiers as they converged on her position. Aria gritted her teeth and pushed a throttle forward. The ship shuddered, then lifted off the ground in a cloud of dust and debris. As she climbed higher, Aria caught her first glimpse of the wider world beyond the camp. The landscape was a patchwork of devastation and alien reconstruction, a sobering reminder of how much had changed. But amidst the ruins, she could see pockets of light, signs that humanity had not been entirely extinguished. The ship broke through the cloud cover, and suddenly, Aria found herself surrounded by stars. The infinite expanse of space stretched out before her, simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. She was free, but she knew her journey was far from over. A warning klaxon jolted her from her reverie. Multiple contacts were approaching rapidly, Zarkan pursuit craft. Aria's hands tightened on the controls as she prepared for the fight of her life. As she maneuvered to face her attackers, a fierce determination welled up inside her. She may have been just one girl in a stolen ship, but she carried with her the hopes and dreams of every human still trapped on Earth. Aria swore then and there that she would not only survive, but find a way to free her people. The first volley of alien weapons fire streaked past her ship, illuminating the cockpit with an eerie glow. Aria's eyes narrowed as she dove into evasive maneuvers, her mind racing to recall everything she had ever learned about space combat. "All right, you overgrown bugs," she muttered, fingers dancing across the weapons console. "Let's see what this ship can really do." As Aria engaged in her desperate battle above the Earth, she had no way of knowing that her daring escape would be the spark that would reignite humanity's fighting spirit. The Zarkhan had enslaved the human race, but in doing so, they had created their own worst nightmare. And now that nightmare was fighting back. Aria's stolen warship shuddered as another blast from the pursuing Zarkhan fighters grazed its hull. Alarms blared throughout the cockpit, warning of multiple system failures. The young woman gritted her teeth, her hands white-knuckled on the controls as she pushed the ship into a wild spiral. Come on, she muttered, eyes darting between the flashing displays. Despite her childhood fascination with spacecraft, the reality of piloting one in combat was overwhelming. Each button, each readout was a mystery that could mean the difference between survival and destruction. A memory flashed through her mind, her father's voice, patient and kind, explaining the basics of flight dynamics. "Remember, sweep out in space, there's no up or down. Use that to your advantage." Taking a deep breath, Aria killed the main engines. For a heart-stopping moment, the ship hung motionless in space. Then, using only maneuvering thrusters, she flipped the craft end over end. The pursuing Zarkhan, caught off guard by the unorthodox move, overshot her position. Aria's fingers flew across the weapons console, activating systems she'd barely understood. To her amazement, a targeting reticle appeared, locking onto the nearest enemy fighter. She squeezed the trigger, and a burst of energy erupted from her ship's cannons. The Zarkhan vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. "I did it," Aria exclaimed, a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief coursing through her. But there was no time to celebrate. The remaining fighters regrouped, their attacks growing more coordinated and intense. Aria knew she couldn't keep this up forever. Her ship, already damaged, wouldn't survive prolonged combat. She needed to escape, to find somewhere to regroup and figure out her next move. But where? As if in answer to her unspoken question, a notification pinged on one of the displays. It was a nav point, pre-programmed into the ship's computer. Aria hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust it, but with the Zarkhan closing in, she had little choice. "Here goes nothing," she said, punching in the coordinates. The ship's engines flared to life, and suddenly the stars around her blurred into streaks of light. Aria felt a momentary sensation of vertigo as the craft entered faster-than-light travel, leaving her pursuers far behind. When the ship finally dropped out of FTL, Aria found herself facing an unfamiliar planet. Its surface was a swirling mass of purples and greens, unlike anything she had ever seen. Scans showed a breathable atmosphere and signs of abandoned structures on the surface. As Aria guided the ship towards the mysterious world, she allowed herself a moment to process everything that had happened. In the span of a few hours, she had gone from a prisoner on Earth to a fugitive in space. The enormity of it all threatened to overwhelm her. But she couldn't afford to break down now. Somehow, she had to find a way to use this ship, to strike back against the Zarkhan and free humanity. It was a monumental task, one that seemed almost impossible for a single teenager to accomplish. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere, buffeted by strong winds. Aria focused on the landing, pushing aside her doubts and fears. As she neared the surface, she could make out the ruins of what appeared to be an ancient city. At its center stood a massive structure that dwarfed everything around it. With a teeth-rattling thud, Aria set the ship down on a crumbling landing pad. She sat there for a long moment, listening to the creaks and groans of the cooling metal. Then, steeling herself, she stood and made her way to the airlock. The planet's air was thick and humid, carrying strange alien scents. Aria stepped cautiously onto the overgrown landing pad, her eyes wide as she took in her surroundings. The ruins around her were clearly not of human origin, yet they weren't Zarkan either. Who had built this place? And why had her ship brought her here? As if drawn by an unseen force, Aria found herself walking towards a central structure. Its walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move when she wasn't looking directly at them. At its base was an entrance, dark and foreboding. Aria hesitated at the threshold, every instinct telling her to turn back. But she had come too far to give up now. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the darkness. As soon as she crossed the entrance, lights flickered to life along the walls. They illuminated a vast chamber filled with what could only be described as alien technology. Banks of strange, crystalline computers lined the walls, their surfaces pulsing with soft light. At the center of the room stood a raised platform. On it was a single object, a small metallic disc. As Aria approached, it began to glow, responding to her presence. With trembling fingers, she reached out and touched the disc. Instantly, her mind was flooded with information. Images, schematics, and concepts beyond her understanding poured into her consciousness. She gasped, staggering under the mental onslaught. When it finally subsided, Aria found herself on her knees, panting heavily. But as she stood, she realized something had changed. The alien technology around her no longer seemed so incomprehensible. She understood its purpose, its potential. This place, she now knew, was a repository of knowledge left behind by an ancient race. A race that had fought the Zarkan long ago and developed weapons and defenses against them. And now that knowledge was hers. Aria's eyes gleamed with newfound determination. She may have started this journey as a scared girl in a stolen ship, but now she had the means to become something more. With this technology, she could strike back against the Zarkan. She could free Earth. As she turned to leave, ready to begin unlocking the secrets of her ship with her new knowledge, Aria paused. For the first time since her escape, a smile crossed her face. "Hold on, humanity," she said softly. "Help is on the way." As Aria emerged from the ancient structure, her mind reeling from the vast amount of knowledge she had acquired, a movement caught her eye. She froze, her heart racing, as she realized she wasn't alone on this alien world. From behind a crumbling pillar, a figure stepped into view. It was tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shimmered in the planet's strange light. 4 arms extended from its torso, and its head was crowned with delicate, feather-like appendages. It was unmistakably alien, but not Zarkan. Aria's hand instinctively went to her side, searching for a weapon she didn't have. The alien raised its upper set of hands in a universal gesture of peace. "Be not afraid, young human," it said, its voice a melodious whisper that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her mind. "I am Zixmar, last of the Elysians, and I have been waiting a very long time for someone like you." Aria hesitated, her mind racing. The knowledge she had absorbed from the alien repository included fragments about the Elysians, an ancient race that had fought against the Zarkan millennia ago. But she had thought them long extinct. You're real," she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought the Elysians were gone." Zixmar's feathery crown rippled, an expression Aria somehow knew indicated sadness. "We are, for the most part. I am the last, preserved here to guide the one who would come to claim our legacy. And that, it seems, is you." As Zixmar spoke, Aria felt her initial fear giving way to curiosity. Here was a being who had actually fought against the Zarkan, who might have insights that could help her in her mission to free Earth. "Can you help me?" she asked, taking a step forward. "I need to find a way to defeat the Zarkan, to save my people." The Elysian's eyes, multifaceted like those of an insect, seemed to soften. "That is precisely why I am here, young one. But the path ahead will not be easy. Are you prepared for the challenges that await?" Arya straightened her back, lifting her chin defiantly. "I've been a slave to the Zarkhan for years. I've seen my world conquered, my family torn apart. I'm ready for whatever it takes to set things right." Zixmar nodded, a gesture that seemed oddly human. "Then let us begin. There is much to do, and time grows short." Over the next several days, Arya worked tirelessly under Zixmar's guidance. The Elysian taught her how to fully interface with the alien technology, how to unlock the true potential of her stolen warship. Arya's mind expanded, grasping concepts that would have been incomprehensible to her just days before. As they worked, Zixmar shared stories of the ancient war against the Zarkhan. The Elysians had been a peaceful race, forced into conflict by the insectoid's relentless expansion. They had fought bravely, developing incredible technologies to combat the threat. But in the end, it hadn't been enough. "We underestimated their adaptability," Zixmar explained one evening as they sat beneath the alien sky. "Each victory we achieved only drove them to evolve, to become more formidable. In the end, we were forced to retreat, to hide away our knowledge in hopes that one day, another race might succeed where we failed." Arya absorbed this information sullenly, understanding the weight of the task before her. "But how can I succeed where your entire civilization couldn't?" she asked, doubt creeping into her voice for the first time since her escape. Zixmar's feathers rippled in what Arya had come to recognize as a smile. "Because, young Arya, you have something we did not. You have the fire of humanity within you. Your species' greatest strength is not your technology or your physical prowess, but your indomitable spirit. Where we saw inevitable defeat, you see hope. Where we retreated, you push forward." The Elysian's words bolstered Arya's resolve. She thought of Earth, of the billions still suffering under Zarkhan rule, of her parents whose faces were beginning to fade from her memory. She couldn't let them down. As their training neared its end, Zixmar led Arya deep beneath the ancient city. They descended into a vast chamber where a massive ship lay dormant, its sleek lines and advanced technology far surpassing even the vessel Arya had stolen. "This is the Starweaver," Zixmar said, pride evident in their telepathic voice. "The culmination of Elysian engineering. It was to be our salvation, but we never got the chance to use it. Now it belongs to you." Arya's eyes widened as she took in the magnificent craft. "Me? But I can't possibly." "You can, and you must," Zixmar interrupted gently. "The Starweaver is keyed to respond only to one who is interfaced with our repository. You are its rightful pilot now." As Arya approached the ship, its systems hummed to life, responding to her presence. She placed a hand on its hull, feeling the power thrumming beneath its surface. In that moment, she knew that with this ship, she had a real chance of challenging the Zarkhan. "What now?" she asked, turning back to her alien mentor. Zixmar's expression grew serious. "Now, young human, you take the fight to the enemy. But remember, victory will require more than just superior technology. You must rally your people, awaken the strength that lies dormant within them." Arya nodded, a plan already forming in her mind. "I'll return to Earth," she said, her voice firm with determination. "I'll show them that the Zarkhan can be fought, that we're not alone in this universe. I'll give them hope." As she prepared to depart, loading the Starweaver with everything she would need for the battles ahead, Arya felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. She was no longer the scared girl who had escaped the labor camp. She was a warrior now, armed with ancient knowledge and advanced technology. Zixmar stood at the entrance to the underground hangar, watching as Arya made her final preparations. "Remember, Arya," the Elysian said, their mental voice tinged with both pride and sadness. "The fate of not just your world, but countless others, rests on your shoulders. May your human spirit burn bright enough to light the way through the darkness that lies ahead." Arya climbed into the Starweaver's cockpit, feeling the ship respond to her as if it were an extension of her own body. As the engines powered up, filling the chamber with a low hum, she looked back at Zixmar one last time. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing no words could truly express her gratitude. The Elysian nodded, their feathery crown rippling in farewell. "Go now, and may the stars guide you to victory." With a deep breath, Aria engaged the Starwaver's systems. The ship rose gracefully, its advanced propulsion systems barely making a sound. As it shot out of the underground hangar and into the alien sky, Aria set her course for Earth. The real battle, she knew, was just beginning. The Starweaver dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the outskirts of Earth's solar system. Aria's heart clenched as she saw her home planet in the distance, a blue marble wrapped in a web of Zarkan ships and orbital stations. The sight steeled her resolve. It was time to strike back. Using the advanced cloaking technology of the Elysian ship, Aria slipped past the outer defenses undetected. Her first target was a massive Zarkan communication hub floating in high orbit. If she could disable it, it would throw the alien forces into disarray and buy her the time she needed to make contact with any remaining human resistance. As she maneuvered the Starwaver into position, Aria's mind raced through the tactical data provided by the ship's AI. The hub was heavily shielded, but there was a vulnerability. A small exhaust port that, if hit with a precise strike, would trigger a cascade failure throughout the station. Just like those old movies Dad used to love, Aria muttered to herself, a small smile playing on her lips despite the tension of the moment. She lined up her shot, the Starwaver's weapons humming with power. With a deep breath, she fired. The energy beam lanced out, invisible to the naked eye but devastatingly effective. It struck the exhaust port with pinpoint accuracy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a blossoming flower of destruction, the communication hub began to break apart. Explosions rippled across its surface as system after system failed. Alarms blared throughout the Starweaver's cockpit as the Zarkan fleet reacted to the sudden attack. Fighters scrambled, capital ships turned their massive weapons towards the last known location of the energy beam. But Aria was already on the move. The Starweaver danced through the chaos, its superior technology allowing her to stay one step ahead of the confused and angry Zarkan forces. As she evaded pursuit, Aria opened a channel on all frequencies used by the human resistance. "People of Earth," she broadcast, her voice strong and clear. "This is Aria Donovan. I've returned with advanced alien technology and knowledge to help us fight back against the Zarkan. The attack you just witnessed is only the beginning. Hope is not lost. I repeat, hope is not lost." She repeated the message several times, praying that someone down on the surface would hear it and understand. As she finished her final repetition, a reply came through, faint and staticky, but unmistakably human. "This is Commander Jackson of the Earth Resistance Front. Aria Donovan, if that's really you, we need immediate assistance. We're launching an attack on a Zarkan ground base in Sector 7, but we're outgunned. Can you provide air support?" Aria's heart leaped. She wasn't alone in this fight after all. "I'm on my way, Commander," she replied, already plotting a course through the Zarkan defenses. "Just hold on." The Starweaver plunged into Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction. Aria pushed the ship to its limits, racing against time to reach the embattled resistance fighters. As she broke through the cloud cover, she saw the battle raging below. A small force of humans, armed with cobbled-together weapons and retrofitted vehicles, was facing off against a much larger Zarkan contingent. The aliens were pushing forward, their superior numbers and technology giving them a clear advantage. Not for long, Aria thought grimly. She opened fire with the Starweaver's weapons, raining down destruction on the Zarkan forces. Tanks exploded, drop ships fell from the sky, and the alien infantry scattered in panic. The resistance fighters, heartened by the unexpected air support, rallied and pushed forward. Aria continued to provide cover, using the Star Weaver's advanced sensors to pinpoint key targets and take them out with surgical precision. In a matter of minutes, the tide of the battle had turned. The Zarkan forces, unused to facing an opponent with superior technology, fell into disarray. Many fled, while others surrendered, overwhelmed by the combined might of the resistance and their mysterious new ally. As the dust settled, Arya landed the Star Weaver in a clearing near the resistance base. She emerged from the ship to find herself surrounded by a crowd of awestruck humans. Many were injured, all were dirty and exhausted, but in their eyes, she saw something that had been missing for far too long: hope. A man stepped forward from the group, his beard streaked with grey and his face lined with the hardships of years spent fighting a seemingly hopeless war. "I'm Commander Jackson," he said, extending a hand. "And I think it's safe to say you just changed the course of this war." Arya shook his hand firmly, feeling the weight of the moment. "I'm glad I could help," she said, "but this is just the beginning. I have information, technology that can help us defeat the Zarkan for good. But I can't do it alone. I need your help, all of your help." Jackson nodded, a fierce determination in his eyes. "You've given us hope, Arya. Something we haven't had in a long time. Whatever you need, we're with you." As the resistance fighters gathered around, eager to hear her plan, Arya felt a surge of emotion. This was why she had escaped, why she had traveled across the galaxy and back. Not just to save humanity, but to remind them of their strength, their resilience. The war was far from over, but as Arya looked at the faces of her fellow humans, tired but unbowed, determined and now filled with hope, she knew that they had a real chance of winning. The Zarkan had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, and now they would pay the price. In the weeks that followed, Arya worked tirelessly alongside Commander Jackson and the Earth Resistance Front to spread the word of hope across the planet. The Star Weaver became a symbol of defiance, appearing suddenly to strike at Zarkan strongholds before vanishing into the night sky. Arya shared the knowledge she had gained from the Elysian repository, teaching the Resistance how to modify their existing technology to combat the Zarkan more effectively. Underground factories sprang up, producing weapons capable of penetrating alien shields and communication devices that could evade detection. But more important than the technology was the change in humanity's spirit. Stories of Arya's return and the victories that followed spread like wildfire. In labor camps and occupied cities, humans began to resist more openly, sabotaging Zarkan operations and fleeing to join the growing rebellion. One morning, as Arya pored over tactical data in the Resistance's hidden base, Commander Jackson approached her with a grave expression. "We've received word from our agents in Europe," he said, his voice tight with concern. "The Zarkan are planning something big. They're gathering their forces for a massive assault on our strongest holdouts. If they succeed, it could crush the rebellion before it truly begins." Arya's mind raced, considering their options. They had made significant progress, but they weren't ready for a full-scale confrontation yet. Then an idea struck her. "What if we don't wait for them to attack?" she said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "What if we take the fight to them first?" Jackson looked skeptical. "We don't have the numbers or firepower to launch a direct assault on their main forces." "Not a direct assault," Arya clarified, pulling up a holographic map of the planet. "A series of coordinated strikes. Hit them where they least expect it, divide their forces, and then we go for their command structure," Jackson finished, catching on to her plan. A slow smile spread across his weathered face. "It's risky, but it just might work." Over the next few days, Arya and the Resistance leadership planned their audacious counter-offensive. Using the Star Weaver's advanced communication systems, they coordinated with rebel cells across the globe. Every available fighter, every piece of salvaged or modified technology would be put to use. As the day of the attack dawned, Arya stood before a gathered crowd of Resistance fighters. Faces both young and old looked up at her, a mix of fear and hope in their eyes. "Today," she began, her voice carrying across the silent assembly. "We take back our planet. The Zarkan thought they could break us, enslave us, make us forget who we are. But they were wrong. We are humanity. We faced extinction before, and we've always found a way to survive, to thrive." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "Each of you has a role to play. Some will strike at Zarkan supply lines. Others will disable their communication relays. And some will engage their forces directly, drawing them away from their true targets. It won't be easy. We will face losses. But remember why we fight. For our families, for our future, for Earth." A cheer went up from the crowd, a roar of defiance that seemed to shake the very ground. Arya felt a swell of pride and determination. This was what Zixma had spoken of, the indomitable human spirit. As the rebels moved out to their assigned positions, Jackson approached Arya. "You should be proud," he said softly. "You've given them something to believe in." Arya nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "Let's just hope it's enough." The battle began at dawn. Across the globe, human forces struck at Zarkan targets with a coordination and ferocity that caught the aliens completely off guard. Resistance cells that had been operating independently for years now worked in perfect sync, guided by the strategic overview provided by Arya and the Star Waver. In North America, a team led by a former hacker named Zeke infiltrated a Zarkan data center, uploading viruses that threw their logistics into chaos. In Asia, a group of farmers-turned-warriors, led by the fierce Eloi Mai, used modified farming equipment to take down a squadron of Zarkan walkers. And in Africa, a band of child soldiers, under the guidance of the gentle giant Kwesi, freed thousands from a labor camp, swelling the ranks of the rebellion. Arya herself led the most crucial mission, a strike at the heart of the Zarkan command structure. With a hand-picked team aboard the Star Waver, she infiltrated the aliens' orbital command station. The battle that ensued was fierce, with Arya using every trick and technique she had learned from the Elysian repository. As alarms blared and Zarkan soldiers swarmed the corridors, Arya fought her way to the central control room. There, she faced off against the Zarkan High Commander, a massive insectoid whose carapace bore the scars of countless battles. "You fight well. For a human," the alien chittered, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "But your species is doomed. We are endless, adaptable. We cannot be defeated." Arya stood her ground, the Elysian energy weapon in her hand humming with power. "You're wrong," she said, her voice steady. "Humanity isn't just fighting for survival. We're fighting for our home, for each other. That's something you'll never understand." The ensuing battle was brutal and swift. Arya moved with a grace and skill that belied her years, every motion honed by her training with Zixmarch. In the end, it was the High Commander who fell, its exoskeleton cracked and smoking from Arya's final decisive blow. As the alien leader fell, Arya rushed to the command console. With trembling fingers, she input the code that would transmit a shutdown signal to every Zarkan ship and installation on and around Earth. It was a desperate gamble, but one that paid off. Across the planet, Zarkan technology went dark, leaving their forces in disarray. Arya's voice echoed across every communication channel, human and alien alike. "People of Earth, the Zarkan command has fallen. Their forces are in chaos. This is our moment. Rise up and take back our world." And rise up they did. From the ashes of their enslavement, humanity emerged, united as never before. The tide had turned, but Arya knew the war was far from over. The Zarkan still had forces on Earth, and more would surely come from the stars. As she looked out at the planet below, a mix of fire and hope burning in the darkness, Arya steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war for humanity's future was just beginning. The months following the fall of the Zarkan command were a whirlwind of activity. Humanity, emboldened by their victory, pushed back against the remaining alien forces with renewed vigor. Arya, now a symbol of hope and resistance, traveled the globe, coordinating efforts and sharing the advanced technology she had brought from the stars. But even as they celebrated their victories, a shadow loomed on the horizon. The Zarkan homeworld had gone silent after the defeat of their Earth-based command, but Aria and the Resistance leadership knew it was only a matter of time before they returned, and in force. "We need to be ready," Aria insisted during a strategy meeting with Commander Jackson and other Resistance leaders. "The Zarkan won't take this defeat lightly. They'll come back with everything they have." Jackson nodded grimly. "Agreed, but how can we prepare for an invasion we can't predict?" Aria's eyes gleamed with determination. "We take the fight to them. We strike at their homeworld before they can launch their counterattack." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, some supporting the audacious plan, others decrying it as suicide. But Aria stood firm, laying out the strategy she had been formulating since her return to Earth. "The Starweaver isn't just a ship," she explained. "It's a key to the entire Elysian defense network. There are outposts, weapon caches, and shipyards scattered across the galaxy, all just waiting to be reactivated. If we can gather those resources, we'll have a fighting chance against the full might of the Zarkan." It was a dangerous plan, fraught with risks, but in the end, the Resistance leaders saw the wisdom in it. They couldn't afford to simply wait for the Zarkan to return. Over the next few weeks, a fleet was assembled. The Starweaver led a motley armada of retrofitted human ships and recovered alien vessels. Volunteers from around the world stepped forward to crew these ships, ready to take the ultimate risk for the sake of their planet's future. As the day of departure approached, Aria found herself standing before a massive crowd in what had once been New York's Central Park. The once pristine green space was now scarred by war, but amidst the destruction, new life was beginning to flourish, a fitting metaphor for humanity's resilience. "My fellow humans," Aria began, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering, "today we embark on our most daring mission yet. We will travel to the stars, not as conquerors or colonizers, but as defenders of our home and our right to exist freely." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, young and old, from every corner of the globe, united in purpose. "Some of us may not return," she continued, her voice sullen. "But know that every sacrifice, every hardship we endure, is in service of a future where our children can look up at the stars without fear. We go to ensure that Earth will never again face the threat of enslavement or extinction." A roar of approval went up from the crowd, a sound of defiance and hope that seemed to shake the very earth. The journey to the Zarkan homeworld was long and perilous. Aria led the fleet from system to system, reactivating ancient Elysian outposts and gathering a formidable array of advanced weaponry. With each stop, the fleet grew stronger, more prepared for the monumental task ahead. Finally, they arrived at the edge of Zarkan-controlled space. The alien homeworld loomed before them, a massive planet surrounded by a vast network of orbital defenses and warships. "This is it," Aria said, addressing the fleet from the Starweaver's bridge. "Everything we fought for comes down to this moment. Remember why we're here. Remember Earth. Remember humanity." The battle that ensued was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ingenuity and determination, combined with Elysian technology, clashed against the full might of the Zarkan war machine. Aria led from the front, the Starweaver dancing through waves of enemy fighters. Around her, human pilots performed maneuvers that should have been impossible, their spirits burning bright enough to overcome their technological disadvantages. On the surface of the Zarkan homeworld, drop teams led by Commander Jackson engaged in fierce ground combat, fighting their way towards the planet's central hive mind, the key to the entire Zarkan civilization. Hours passed, and the tide of battle ebbed and flowed. For every Zarkan ship destroyed, a human vessel fell. For every alien stronghold captured, a drop team was lost. But still, humanity pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure meant the end of everything they held dear. In the final push, Aria found herself face to face with the Zarkan Empress, a colossal being that seemed to embody the very essence of the hive mind. The two engaged in a battle of wills as much as weapons, each representing the hopes and dreams of their respective species. "Why do you resist?" The Empress's voice boomed in Aria's mind. "Your species is young, weak. You could evolve under our guidance, become something greater." Aria stood her ground, the combined knowledge of humanity and the Elysians burning bright within her. "We don't need to evolve under your tyranny," she shot back. "Our strength comes from our diversity, our individuality, something you could never understand." With a cry that seemed to channel the spirit of every human who had ever lived, Aria unleashed the full power of the Star Weaver. The Elysian weapon struck true, piercing the Empress's defenses and severing her connection to the hive mind. In that moment, the Zarkan Empire crumbled. Without the guiding will of the Empress, their forces fell into disarray. Some fled, others surrendered, and still others turned on each other in confusion. As the dust settled on the battle, Aria stood on the bridge of the Star Weaver, looking out at the liberated Zarkan homeworld. The cost had been high, but they had done it. Humanity had secured its place among the stars. In the years that followed, Earth began the long process of rebuilding. The knowledge and technology gained from their victory allowed humanity to heal their planet and reach out to the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers and peacekeepers. Aria, hailed as a hero but uncomfortable with the adulation, chose to continue her journey among the stars. There were other races out there, she knew, who might need the help of humanity and the legacy of the Elysians. As she prepared to depart on her next mission, Aria took one last look at the blue marble that was her home. Earth had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger for it. Whatever the future held, she knew that humanity would face it together, their indomitable spirit lighting the way through the darkness of space. The girl who had once been a slave had become a legend, but more importantly, she had become a symbol of hope, not just for humanity, but for all those who dared to stand against tyranny and fight for their right to exist freely among the stars.